My goal today is to create a dashboard in Scoreboard. I've already logged in and have landed at my homepage. To start, I'd like to review some of the features of dashboards. I'll select Dashboards, expand Mobile World, and then select the Key Performance Indicators organization. Up at the top, I'll then select New Dashboard, type a name for the dashboard like Training, accept the default starting layout, and then select Create. I get presented with a toolbar from which I'll select Settings on the far right. I'll start with background color, and to work with a brighter background, I'll switch from gray to white. I'll then return to Settings by clicking on Background Color. Next, I'll select Snap To and see that the options are Widgets, Grid, and None. The default is Widgets, in which a line will be drawn between widgets when aligning. If I select Grid, there is a visual grid which will help align widgets on the screen. And if I select None, there is no guide to help with alignment. I'll leave the default of widgets and then click away. If I wish to add a new widget to the dashboard, I'll select the plus icon in the far left. If I wanted to add my company logo, I'll select Image. From here, I have two options. I could select Upload Image, navigate to the appropriate directory, select the image, and click Open. However, I'll select Cancel, and I'll show the alternative option by selecting Add Shared Image. This option allows for the selection of images that have been previously loaded to the Files area. The most recent revision is the master. I'll select the latest version of the spider logo and then select Add. I can then move the image across the screen and resize it. Next, I'll provide an example of embedding a widget by linking to the Scoreboard main site. I'll select Add Widget, and this time select the embedded widget. I'll type the URL, and note that there are a couple requirements. The embedded link must be HTTPS, and the site I'm adding must be allowed to be embedded in other sites. I'll then click Done, click Save in the upper right, and then click Done in the bottom left. I'll see that the widget is interactive, and I'll illustrate that by clicking on the white box here and maybe just selecting Learn and scroll around a bit. Okay, to save some real estate, I'll go back to Edit, select the widget, and then choose Delete. Next, I'll illustrate that a few functions can be used in dashboards that dynamically update. Once again, I'll select the plus icon, and this time select the text widget. I'll double-click and then enter the functions calendar, calendar-period, and then today, and wrap each of those in brackets. I'll then click Save in the upper right, and then click Done to see those values automatically update for today's date and the periodicity that I've selected in the top right. If I switch to quarterly, for instance, and select Show Results, I'll see a couple of the values update automatically on the dashboard. I'll switch back to monthly and May. I'll then go back to Edit, and then once again to save space, I'll delete the widget. Next, I'll show that notes can be included with dashboards. Once again, I'll select Add Widget. This time I'll select Notes. I'll then select Scorecard Item, and within the Demo org, I'll expand Financial and increase Profit, and then I'll select Total Gross Profit, which I know contains a note, and then I'll click Add. I'll then click onto the dashboard. I can accept the default display, which is a truncated view of the note. To show an alternative view, I'll leverage the duplicate option. I'll select that widget, select Settings, and down towards the bottom I'll select Duplicate. And that will create a second instance of the widget that I can then move around the dashboard, and I'll just move it to the far right. With that widget or object selected, I'll go back to Settings, and I'm going to go to an option called Display As, and switch to Full Notes. Instead of seeing a truncated view of the note, I can now see a full display of it, including any replies. I can then compare the two options side by side and decide on which of the two I prefer, or in this case, once again to save space, I'll delete them both. Next, I'll illustrate that different types of thresholds can be included on dashboards. I'll go back to Add Widget, and this time select Speedometer. I'll go back to Demo, expand Examples this time, and Scoring Types. And I'm going to add the goal red flag KPI and the 3-color KPI. And then click onto the dashboard. Then just move these two around so I can see them separately. I'll select the goal red flag object, go back to Settings, and see that there are a number of different options that I can change on the speedometer, like the drill down destination, what is shown, the background and size, whether it should be kept in front of other objects, locked in position, duplicated, and lastly an option to delete the speedometer altogether. I'll select Showing and see at the bottom, if a KPI only contains goal and red flag thresholds, I have the ability to either show them or not. And I'll choose to have them shown. On the 3-color object, I'll select Settings, go back to Showing, and notice that towards the bottom there's a differing display of thresholds. I'll need to select it and see that there are multiple thresholds like best and worst that I can choose to select. In this case, just to pick something different, I'll click best and worst. Next, I'd like to illustrate an option with charts and background thresholds. To do that, I'll first get rid of these two objects, go back to Add Widget, and select Chart. I'll select Scorecard Item, and this time I'm going to select within Customer Support, and then Customer Satisfaction. I'm going to select Customer Churn and select Add. I'll then click on the chart, go back to Settings, and go to an option called Background Thresholds. To apply it, I'll simply click on Customer Churn. And I'll see those colorings have now come across red, yellow, green with a lighter shaded background there. I'll then click Save in the upper right. Now, if I preferred a darker shaded background, I could go to Settings in the bottom left, select Application Administration, and then in the upper right, switch the option Show Darker Colors for Chart Background Thresholds to Yes. I can then click Save, go back to the chart, and I'll see the darker colors. Okay, with that, I'll delete the training dashboard to get that one out of the way, and I'll delete this other training dashboard as well. Okay, having reviewed some of the features with dashboards, I'll review a few dashboards that have already been developed. I'll select the call center key KPIs up at the top, and I'll get into Done mode there. This provides a cockpit view of performance across 6 key KPIs in the call center. For a selected month, it provides a colorized view of performance, the actual value, change from the previous period, red and gold thresholds, and the normalized score. Another dashboard that has already been built is the Product Delivery and Effectiveness dashboard. Here again is a colorized view of monthly performance where I can see 1 KPI in red and 2 in green. I see trends to previous period performance in the upper left, a description for each of the KPIs, and the actual value for, in this case, May of 2019. At the bottom is a chart showing a trend for the past year of frequent versus infrequent use customers. Other dashboards already built are the User and Influencer Engagement Dashboard and the Customer Satisfaction Dashboard. Having reviewed some of the existing dashboards, I'll try rebuilding the first 2 that I looked at. To start, I'll select New Dashboard up at the top. I'll type a name, and let's call it New Call Center. I'll accept the default layout, and I'll select Create. I'm now ready to add my speedometers, but before I do that, I'll click on Full Screen in the top, towards the top right here. I'll then click on the plus icon in the far left to add a widget, and select Speedometer. On the left, I'll select Customer Support, and on the right, I'll expand Help Desk calls, and I'll add the first 6 in this list here, down to first call resolution. Once I'm done with that, I'll click Away and confirm that the speedometers have been added to the dashboard. At this point, I'll select Save and then start working with the speedometers. Each of the speedometers are independent of each other and can be drag and dropped across the screen. If I click on one of them, in the top right, a settings icon appears. I actually want the same properties on all 6, so I'll drag and drop a rectangle around all of them by starting towards the top left and then working my way to the bottom right. Once they're all highlighted, I'll then select the settings icon on any one of them. And I'll just pick the one in the top middle here. I'll select Showing, and then I'll choose to enable the score and the thresholds. At this point, once again, I'll click Save, and then continue on with my changes. If I wanted to align just the top 3 speedometers, I can create a rectangle around just the top 3, then click the Align icon at the top, and then click the top option. If I wanted to align the bottom 3, I would select just those, click Align, and maybe I want to align the bottom of those. Lastly, I'll align the left position of the speedometers on the left. I'll highlight just those 2, click Align, this time click Left, and maybe I'll do that for each of these. I'll then click Save, and then exit full screen. And then click Done. Next, I'll try to recreate the product delivery and effectiveness dashboard that I reviewed earlier. Once again, I'll select the New Dashboard option to get started. I'll give it a name like New Product, accept the default layout, and click Create. This particular dashboard contained 3 bubbles and a chart. So to start, I'll select the plus icon again, and I'll pick on the bubble widget, select scorecard item, and on the left-hand side, I'll select key performance indicators. On the right, I'll expand product delivery and effectiveness, and then I'll add each of the 3 KPIs shown here. At this point, I'll then click off and click Save. I'll now move the bubbles around to space them out a bit. And like we saw with speedometers previously, each bubble has its own properties. However, I'll highlight all 3 and then choose the settings icon next to any one of them. I'll change the layout to be a rounded rectangle towards the top here. And I'll change the background to solid. I'll go back to settings, go to the showing option, and I'll choose to include the description, actual value, and the score. Lastly, I'll click the Align icon and align the top. If I click away and I notice the sizing is off, maybe I want to go back, click the settings icon, go to the size option, and maybe I'll change the height to 250. Click away, and maybe I'm happier with those changes now. At this point, once again, I'll click Save. Next, I'll add a chart to show frequent versus infrequent use customers. Once again, I'll select the plus icon, and this time select Chart. I'll select Scorecard Item, and under Product Delivery and Effectiveness, I'll add Frequent Use Customers. I'll then click on the chart and drag it down a bit. To introduce that second KPI, I'll click on Settings and then select Edit Chart. Towards the top middle, I'll select Add Series. This time select Infrequent Use Customers, and then select Done. Note that this KPI comes across as a line, but I can change that underneath the graph section and maybe change that to something like a bar. But in this case, I'll just leave it and select Done. At this point, I can go to Settings, and since now I have multiple KPIs on screen, I might want to remove that chart title that's shown or change it, and I can do that from Set Chart Title. And in this case, I'll just choose to remove it. And then select Done. Once I'm happy with the way the dashboard looks, I'll select Save in the upper right, and then in the bottom left, select Done. Lastly, if I'd like to zoom in on the dashboard, I can move my mouse to a blank area and see a magnifying glass icon. If I click, I'll see that I have zoomed in. To zoom back out, it's a simple click again.